Okay, so this unit we are going to be learning about data sets and how we can gather information from them and use that information to compare. So today we're going to talk about measures of center and dispersion. So measures of center talks about kind of like the average value or the expected value. And then dispersion talks about how spread out the data is. So we're going to start with measures of center first. So mean and median are two of our common measures of center. We're going to learn about mode in a minute as well, and that's also a measure of center, but we're going to start with mean and median. So the mean is the average data value and we use the symbol X with a bar on top to denote the mean. And to calculate the mean, your calculator is actually going to do it for you, but what your calculator is doing is it's taking the sum of all the data values. So you add up all your data values together, and then you divide by the total number of data values you have. But again, your calculator is going to do that for you, so you don't have to worry about it. Then we also have the median. This is the data value that's in the middle. And again, your calculator will do this for you. There's no real a specific symbol for median, but your calculator calls it MED, so just so you can find it. A couple things about the median. First is that the data has to be in order. Your values must be in increasing order in order to find it. But again, your calculator is going to do it, but if you're ever doing it by hand, data values must be in order. So that's only if you're doing it by hand. If you're typing the values into your calculator, you don't have to put them in order. Your calculator will do that for you. And then also, if there is an even number of data values, that means there's going to be two values that are in the middle. And again, this is just if you're doing it by hand, your calculator will do all this. But if you have two data values in the middle for an even number of data values, you would take the average of those two middle values. So if there's an even number of data values, take the average of the two in the middle. So again, these two things are important if you're doing it by hand. But if you have your graphing calculator, you can just use that as well. Now, a standard deviation is a measure of dispersion, of how spread out the data is. And the standard deviation, we use the notation SX for standard deviation, and this tells you on average how far away your data values are from the mean. On average, how far data values are from the mean. And usually we use standard deviation to help us determine how consistent a data set is. Your calculator will calculate the value for you. Used to determine how consistent a data set is. A smaller standard deviation means more consistency, more consistent, because that means your data values are closer to the mean. The larger the standard deviation, the more spread out your data is, because the further on average your values are from the mean, which means it's less consistent. Okay, so we have directions here on how to type this in your calculator. We're going to use the data for example 1. Let's see if I can get my camera to work here. Okay, so So when you have your calculator, you're going to hit the Stat button, which is right here under Delete. Select that first option, Edit. If you have stuff in these lists, make sure it says L1 and L2, and you want to clear this, hit the up arrow so that it's highlighted, and then hit Clear, Enter. Do not hit Delete. That will delete the list and mess up everything. Clear, Enter to clear what's there. Then you're going to type in your data values, so 82, 77. Typing in all our values. Okay, and once we have them all typed in, then you're going to hit Stat, go over to the Calc menu, and select the first option, one var stats. Just hit Enter until a bunch of stuff pops up. Only hit Enter once though, so you're still able to scroll. If you hit Enter again, you won't be able to scroll through, so make sure you can still scroll through everything. Now this is giving you a lot of information, but we only need a few of it right now. So if you'll see this first one, the X with the bar, that's your mean value, so our mean is 79. If we go down a couple more, here's our SX. This is our standard deviation on average, how far or how spread out our data values are from the mean. If we scroll down, we can find MED. There is our median, 79.5. So our calculator gives us all these values. Let's write these down. Okay, so we had our mean. That was the X bar, and that was 79, which this is telling you that the average, in this case it was scores on an exam. So the average exam score is 79. It also told us the median. That was the MED, and that was 79.5. Remember, median is the value in the middle, so that means the exam score in the middle, or the middle exam score, is 79.5. So pretty close to the mean. Oops, exam score is 79.5. And then finally, we were told our standard deviation, which was at SX, and that was 10.3. So this tells us on average exam scores, because you just use whatever units that our data is. Exam scores are 10.3 points away. This can be plus or minus, either above the mean or below the mean, but it's just 10.3 points away from the mean, meaning you can go either direction. Alright, so again, you've got to understand what these values mean. Okay, our last one is our mode. This is another measure of center. Mode is the data value that happens the most. Now with mode, we have a couple situations. So sometimes you can just have one mode and cool, that's your data value. Sometimes we can have a bimodal set of data, which is a data set that has two modes. And at that point, you would list both, so you'd have two modes. And then we could have a multimodal set of data, which is when a data set has more than two modes. And typically, at this point, the mode is not reported. So if we ever have more than two modes, you would just say no mode at that point, because it's not really going to be helpful. So for the mode, you list it if there's one, you list it if there's two, but if there's more than two, you just say no mode. Now your calculator does not explicitly tell you the mode. Let's see if I can get my camera to work again. But there is a way to use your calculator to make it a little easier. So if you hit the Stat button, go to Sort A, and just hit Enter once. So it's popping up with the cursor there. Then you hit Second Stat and select L1, hit Enter, and it should say Done. And now if you go back to your list, so Stat Edit, it puts all of your data values in order for you which just makes it easier to kind of go through and see if we have any repeats. So it looks like as we go through, so far there's only one of each number, and yet we don't have any repeats there. So that means each number is only happening once, which means that'd be a multimodal, because technically all of the data values would be in mode, which is not helpful. So we would just say that there's no mode for this. So no mode since all the data values occur only once. Once. Okay. So really your calculator does the work for you. You just have to know how to use it. So I want you guys to look at example 3. This is talking about the birth weights in pounds of some babies. So you are going to go to your list and you're going to enter in all of these data values. I know there's a few, but you got to enter data. That's what stats is about. So you're going to enter those into your list. You're going to find the mean, the median, the mode, and the standard deviation. So all 4 things for example 3. So go ahead and try example 3. All right, and then there is just a quick check question, self-assessment, and bring any questions you have to the Google Meet.